Hello everybody, welcome to Tiger Tales, where you will find fanfiction written and read to you by me, your host, Tai Tiger. Now, Power Rangers Future Foundation is still going. It is going to be one of the major pinpoints on the channel, but I did want to dive in to other fandoms that I'm a big part of and show you guys what else I can do when it comes to writing and storytelling. So today we have something different, something off topic to Power Rangers, and today we're with Walking Dead. Now of course all fanfiction on this channel does not infringe copyright and does not hinge upon the original content. So let's dive into Walking Dead Brothers Bound. Chapter 1, Jake. Jake woke up with a sudden jolt. The dead silence was almost alarming. The cold breeze filled the room, making it unbearable to stay still. He gave up on trying to get some sleep. So he climbed out of his sleeping bag and packed his bag. Once packed, he replaced his bag on his back. He grabbed his machete and walked down the stairs. He gently placed his machete down and opened the basement door, where he found the floor drenched in oil, which he had spilled the night beforehand, ready for this moment. He pulled out a box of matches and lit one of the match. He threw it and the match down into the basement and the floor lit ablaze. Jake moved quickly, but very swift. He grabbed his machete and slipped out the window, making sure not to use any of the doors as the hinges were rusty and would make squeaky noises. Once out of the building, he grabbed his boots from behind a bush. He put them on. He took them off last night whilst he was looking for a house. He did this so he would not make noise with the creaky floorboards. He then slightly jogged through the alleyway. He crossed the road and hid in the doorway of a petrol station. He could see plenty of walkers dragging themselves through the abandoned road, which Jake needed to get through to reach the bridge. Suddenly, an explosion erupted from the other side of the road, behind the house visible to him. The shockwave of the explosion hit Jake, making him have to brace himself. Then all the walkers started walking towards the source of the explosion. They were leaving the bridge. Jake grinned as the explosion worked exactly as he planned. He waited for the walkers to pass before he started jogging again, making his way up and across the bridge. He didn't stop. He didn't look back. He didn't know how much time he had before the walkers realized that the explosion was just an old house which had blew up and there was nothing else to it. Jake came to a sudden halt. There was a walker stuck under a car, which only revealing its top half. It spotted Jake and started reaching out, its cold, lifeless hands trying to touch Jake, trying to find warmth once again. Jake rammed his machete into the head of the crawling walker. He could feel the skull resisting him, but with some strength he broke through the skull and sliced through the brain. The walker dropped to the ground lifeless. He removed his blade from the now still body. Blood started spilling from the entrance and exit wounds. Jake wiped his blade in his shirt, then carried on. He kept low, making sure no one could see him. He used the cars that were left that had rust as coverage. He kept on his toes, making sure not to make so much noise, just in case there was a few stragglers left behind. He slowly climbed over a car barricade, and then stopped as he saw a walker torn in half, crawling its way up to the bridge, ever so slowly, trying to catch up with its fellow walkers. Jake walked up to it and stabbed it in the skull, ending its torment. He cleaned the blood off his blade, and then hopped off the bridge and made his way down the street. Suddenly the sound of roaring engines filled the air. Jake dived into an alleyway and hid behind an old garbage disposal. He poked his head round the corner to see several bikers speed past, heading towards the bridge. The possibility of them seeing or hearing Jake's little explosion distraction was very high. Jake ran down the alleyway and opened the nearest door and jumped in. Jake closed the door quickly but quietly. He then looked around. He had walked into a library. He took a few steps in when the floor caved in, dropping Jake into a pit of rubble. Jake hit the ground and everything went black. Jake woke to see darkness. He looked up to see the ceiling, a bright light shining in from the window, which told Jake that the floor had caved in, but the rest of the building was intact. Jake stood and dusted himself off. That's when he saw it. He didn't feel it. The adrenaline had numbed the pain. Jake looked down at his side when a piece of wood had embedded itself into him. It was rather thick and easily 10 inches long. Jake had found somewhere quiet to sit and repair himself the best he could. Jake tried to take a deep breath, but was caught off as the pain pulsed as his breath filled the lungs. No deep breaths. Noted, Jake whispered. Jake pulled off his backpack and pulled out a stick which had some torn cloth wrapped around it. He pulled out a lighter, kicked it alight and hovered it under the cloth, setting it ablaze, making it into a torch. He tucked the lighter back into his pocket. As he had to keep it safe, he had to make sure he went back to Baz. Jake took a few steps forward, the light from the flaming torch making it a little easier to see through the rubble and the dust cloud. Jake took a long look around and saw that the room had caved in, the basement now at the ground level. The rest of the building and the other rooms were fine. Jake could easily climb his way up, out of the big dip. He stabbed the torch into the muddy wall, allowing the light to stay in one place, and he started climbing up the muddy walls, placing his foot on the piping, using it as a platform to pull himself up, so he had to be a bit more careful as the piece of wood was sticking out from his side. He could feel the shirt becoming ever more soaked in blood. He picked up the pace and started climbing quicker. He finally got to the top. He couldn't see over the edge though. He grabbed onto the first thing he could and pulled himself up, and he climbed and pulled himself over the ledge. He stopped and laid there for a minute. He took the time to catch his breath. He opened his eyes to see a walker stood right above him. He then realised that what he used to pull himself up was the walker. He darted up to his feet, but the sudden pain vibrated through him. "Damn it," Jake muttered. He grabbed his machete and swung for the walker, the pain anchoring his attack. The walker grabbed onto Jake and opened its mouth. Jake pulled away, but the walker pushed its body weight into the grapple, making Jake stumble backwards. He then tried to pull the walker off him, but with the pain he hadn't much strength. The walker tried to bite him again, Jake pulling away, making both himself and the walker fall back into the massive pit. Jake called out in pain as he hit the floor. The walker bounced off Jake and rolled across the wet floor. Jake watched as the walker came to its senses and started slowly crawling to Jake. Jake's chest started elevating at rapid pace, as the slight shred of fear dripped into Jake's mind. He pulled his bag around and started rummaging his hand through the bag. He pulled out a small pistol. He braced himself and tried to pull the trigger, but his hand went numb. "Ah, damn it!" Jake growled. He swapped hands and braced himself. He didn't have the best shot with his left hand, but the pain in his right hand was affecting his shot. He took aim and pulled the trigger. The sound of the gun echoed loudly, and for what seemed forever. The walker was still crawling towards him. He had missed. Jake took another shot, but missed again. The walker reached up and grabbed Jake's foot and started pulling on the boot. Jake kicked with his free foot, kicking the walker off him. Jake then took aim and pulled the trigger. The head of the walker exploded and lifeless corpse fell to the floor. Jake then walked quickly. He grabbed the walker and pulled it close. He then pushed himself into the dead body, the piece of wood in his side penetrating the corpse. Jake then laid onto himself, putting all his weight onto the corpse, the rotting smell invading his nose and turning his stomach. Jake then held on to the wood and used his body and the corpse to steady the wood into one place. He then lifted himself off the corpse, which also made the wood slide out of him. Jake felt the release of the piece of wood from his body. He fell backwards as the pain went sharp and numb. He sat there panting and took a moment. He pulled his backpack closer to him. He opened the small pocket and pulled out a needle and some thread, and sat there sewing himself up. He sat there for a while. He took a mouthful of water and then he packed his bag. Jake then started climbing, ignoring the pain. He climbed to the top and stood there for a minute. He took a deep breath and then started walking. He found a broken window and climbed out of it. He now was free from the building. He then carried on down the street. Jake walked up to the headless horseman statue and looked around. He turned his head back to the way he came to see several walkers heading his way. Jake sighed. "Looks like you've got nowhere to run," a voice said behind him. Jake spun around to see the black man with a pistol aimed right at Jake, his shoulder wounded and his clothes were stained in blood. "You must be Jake," the man said. And there you go, Chapter 1 to Walking Dead Brothers Bound. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. It's a little different to what I'm usually writing, and I wanted to show you guys my other story writing abilities. So, as of August, we've had a Pokemon chapter, Walking Dead chapter. I've got 2 more different storylines that isn't Pokemon related, Power Ranger related, and then I will delve into more stuff in September. I hope you guys are enjoying this, and I hope you guys enjoyed this particular story. If you guys want to see more Walking Dead, let me know. I want to quickly shout out Zero the Hero. I was recently on that podcast, so make sure you go check that out. Go check out the Rachel and Lee show, which I'm a regular on now, so go check out that. Cosplay Dude 637 is doing some amazing storytime work, and I really hope he takes the opportunity to work with me on the story. Go check out Baker Ranger's Movie Talks, where he talks about a lot of movies. I've also been on that show, and we talked about a lot of Lord of the Rings, which was a lot of fun. go check out all these people on Spotify, podcasts, and all sorts of stuff. And make sure you go check out the Red Cornish Ranger Nerds Through Comics, which he does audio drama as well, and I'm also there as well. So go make sure you check out all these people. They're absolutely fun and a lot of fun to be heard on Spotify and all the other places you guys can hear your podcasts. Now, go check out my other stories, and I shall see you guys very soon.